The fluorescent lights above her head flickered once before everything went dark, and Fiona Kellerman's last conscious thought was that she'd never even been afraid of needles. When awareness returned, it came slowly, like surfacing from deep water. Fiona's eyelids felt heavy, weighted down by exhaustion that seemed to have seeped into her bones. She tried to move, but her limbs wouldn't cooperate, responding with only the faintest twitch. Voices filtered through the fog in her mind, low, urgent, speaking words she couldn't quite grasp. "Move aside." The command cut through the murmur like a blade through silk. The voice was male, rich and commanding, with an accent that seemed to belong to another century entirely. "I said move." "Your Majesty, the medical staff needs to assess. No one touches her." Fiona's eyes finally obeyed her desperate mental commands, fluttering open to reveal a ceiling that definitely wasn't the one at the University Blood Donation Center. This ceiling was vaulted, made of dark stone that seemed to absorb the light from ornate chandeliers. The flames in those chandeliers weren't electric, they were real fire, dancing in crystals that looked older than anything she'd ever seen. She turned her head, the movement causing the room to spin slightly, and froze. A man stood beside what appeared to be an elaborate bed, her bed, she realized with growing alarm. But calling him simply a man felt like calling the ocean simply water. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with hair so pale it seemed to glow silver white in the firelight. His skin held the same porcelain quality, luminous and perfect, as though carved from marble by an artist who understood beauty on a fundamental level. His features were sharp and aristocratic, all elegant angles and cold precision, softened only by lips that were fuller than expected and currently pressed into a firm line. But it was his eyes that held her captive. They were crimson, not brown or hazel, or any color that belonged on a human face, but pure, undeniable red, like rubies lit from within. He was looking at her. "You're awake," he said, and the relief in his voice seemed at odds with his imposing presence. Finally. Fiona's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. She tried again, managing a whisper. "Where am I?" "Safe." He moved closer, and she noticed he wore clothing that seemed like a strange blend of historical and modern black trousers that were clearly contemporary, but a white shirt with detailing at the collar and cuffs that belonged in a period drama, overlaid with a deep burgundy coat that looked like it cost more than her entire year's tuition. "You collapsed at the Blood Donation Center. Your condition required immediate intervention." "Condition?" Fiona pushed herself up on her elbows, and immediately his hand was there, steadying her with a touch that was surprisingly gentle despite the obvious strength in his fingers. His skin was cool against hers. "I just got a little dizzy. It happens sometimes when people donate. I just needed juice and a cookie and you nearly died." The words hung in the air between them. Fiona stared at him, taking in the absolute certainty in his expression, the way his jaw tightened as though the memory itself caused him pain. "That's ridiculous," she said, but her voice wavered. "It was just a routine donation. I've done it before." "Your iron levels were catastrophically low. Your blood pressure dropped so severely that your heart nearly stopped." He spoke with the precision of someone reciting facts, but his hand remained on her arm, thumb tracing an absent pattern against her skin. "The incompetent fools running that center had no idea. They would have let you die on their floor." Fiona pulled her arm back, and though he let her go, she saw something flash in those red eyes. Hurt, perhaps, or anger, quickly shuddered. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware she was wearing a nightgown she didn't recognize, made of fabric so soft it felt like water against her skin. "Who are you?" she asked. "And what are you?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Direct. I appreciate that." He inclined his head in a gesture that was somehow both a nod and a bow. "I am Caspian Draculesht, king of the Noctis court, and as for what I am..." He paused, watching her face carefully. "I believe you already know, Miss Kellerman." Vampire. The word screamed through her mind, bringing with it every horror movie, every legend, every story whispered in the dark. But looking at him now, at the way he stood with perfect stillness, the way firelight didn't quite touch him, the same way it touched everything else, the way his chest didn't seem to rise and fall with breath, it all made terrible, impossible sense. "Vampires aren't real," she said, but it sounded weak even to her own ears. "We are very real. We've simply learned to be, discreet." Caspian gestured around the room. "This is one of our sanctuaries, hidden beneath what your world knows as the old Ravencross estate downtown. We've existed alongside humanity for millennia, bound by laws and codes that keep both our species safe." Fiona's mind raced. "The blood donation center, you were there?" "I was." His expression darkened. "Our kind often monitors such places. The scent of blood, especially blood given freely, is—" He seemed to search for words. "Potent. I maintain strict control over my court's feeding practices. We have arrangements with several blood banks, legal and ethical means of sustaining ourselves. I was conducting a routine inspection when I smelled you." Heat crept up Fiona's neck at the way he said that word, "you like." It meant something more than it should. "Your blood sang to me," Caspian continued, moving to a window she hadn't noticed before. Heavy drapes blocked whatever lay beyond. "I've lived for 7 centuries, Miss Kellerman. In all that time, I've never experienced anything quite like it. The scent was so exquisite, so perfectly matched to my nature, that I nearly lost control right there among all those humans." His hand gripped the window frame, and she saw the wood creak under his fingers. "Then I heard the commotion, heard you fall, heard your heartbeat stutter and slow." "So you— what? Kidnapped me?" He turned sharply. "I saved you. The human doctors were panicking, useless. I used my authority to claim you, brought you here where my personal physician could provide proper care. You've been unconscious for 2 days." "2 days?" Fiona threw back the covers, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. The room tilted alarmingly, but she gritted her teeth against the wave of dizziness. "My family, my roommate, they'll be looking for me. They'll have called the police. You can't just— They believe you're recovering at a private medical facility. All the proper documentation has been filed. Your family has been contacted and reassured." Caspian was in front of her in an instant, moving with that impossible speed that confirmed everything supernatural about him. "Please, you need to rest. Your body is still recovering. From something you did to me." Accusation sharpened her voice. "From something I prevented." His patience seemed endless, but she caught something desperate underneath it. "Miss Kellerman, Fiona, you must understand. In our world, when a vampire encounters a blood match as perfect as you are to me, it creates a bond. Not one I chose, not one you consented to, but one that exists nonetheless. Every instinct I possess is screaming at me to protect you, to keep you safe, to ensure no harm comes to you ever again." Fiona wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all, but looking into his eyes, she saw only raw honesty. "That's insane." Perhaps. He didn't retreat, didn't look away. "But it's truth nonetheless. I know this is overwhelming. I know you're frightened and confused and probably contemplating various ways to escape, but I need you to believe me when I say that you're safe here. I will not harm you. I will not feed from you without permission, and I will not keep you prisoner. Then I can leave." The muscle in his jaw twitched. "Once you're fully recovered, and we've ensured that whatever caused your severe anemia won't immediately put you back in danger, yes, though I would very much prefer you stay." The admission seemed to cost him something. Fiona studied him, this impossible creature who claimed to be a king, who looked at her like she was something precious and fragile and necessary all at once. "Why?" she asked softly. "You don't even know me." "No," Caspian agreed, "but I would like to, if you'll allow it." Before Fiona could answer, a knock sounded at the door, firm and insistent. Caspian's expression shifted into something cold and forbidding. "Enter." The door swung open to reveal another vampire. This one was female, tall and willowy with the same white hair and pale skin, though her eyes were more violet than red. She wore modern clothing, sleek black pants and a silk blouse, but carried herself with the same ancient authority that Caspian radiated. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice carrying a British accent, "the council is demanding an audience. They've heard about the human, and they're—" her gaze flicked to Fiona. "Concerned." "Let them be concerned," Caspian said dismissively. "I'll address them when I'm ready. They're threatening to invoke old laws, claiming you've violated the Second Accord by bringing an unauthorized human into our sanctuary." The woman's expression remained neutral, but Fiona detected worry beneath the formal tone. Lord Constantine is particularly vocal about it. Caspian's hands clenched into fists. Constantine can voice his concerns directly to me after I've ensured Miss Kellerman's well-being. Caspian. The woman's formality dropped slightly. They could challenge you over this. Is she worth that risk? Yes. No hesitation, no doubt. She is. The certainty in his voice sent a flutter through Fiona's chest that had nothing to do with her recent medical crisis. The female vampire's eyebrows rose slightly before she bowed her head. As you wish, Your Majesty. I'll hold them off as long as possible. She glanced at Fiona again, and this time something almost sympathetic crossed her features. Welcome to court, human. I suspect your arrival is going to change everything. Then she was gone, the door closing with a soft click that seemed too loud in the sudden silence. What did she mean by that? Fiona asked. About changing everything? Caspian returned to her side, and this time when he sat on the edge of the bed, she didn't pull away. The vampire world is governed by strict hierarchies and ancient laws. As king, my actions carry significant weight and set precedents. By bringing you here, by claiming you publicly as under my protection, I've essentially declared your importance. Other vampires will take note. Some will be curious. Others, he trailed off, others will see me as a threat. Some may. He met her eyes. Which is precisely why I cannot allow anyone to touch you. Until I've made your status absolutely clear, until I've ensured that every vampire in this city understands that harming you means answering to me personally, you need to remain under my direct protection. Fiona processed this, her mind still struggling to accept that this was her reality now. Yesterday she'd been a normal college student trying to do something good by donating blood. Today she was apparently in the middle of vampire politics and under the protection of their king. This is completely insane, she muttered. Yes, Caspian agreed. It rather is. Despite everything, Fiona found herself almost wanting to smile. So what happens now? Now, he said, standing and offering his hand, I show you that my world, while different from yours, isn't something to fear. And you eat something. My physician was quite adamant that you need to rebuild your strength. Fiona looked at his extended hand. Everything rational in her mind screamed that this was dangerous, that she should demand to leave immediately, that she should run from this impossible situation. But something else, something that seemed to resonate in her very bones, urged her to trust this strange, intense vampire who looked at her like she hung the moon. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, cool and strong, and he helped her to her feet with a gentleness that contradicted his obvious power. There's a sitting room adjacent to this chamber. It's more comfortable for conversation, and I've had food prepared for you. Can you eat food? Fiona asked as he guided her toward another door she hadn't noticed. Or is it just blood? We can consume regular food, though it provides no sustenance. Many of us maintain the habit for social situations. He opened the door, revealing a room that looked like something from a Gothic fantasy. Dark wood furniture, rich burgundy and gold fabrics, more of those crystal chandeliers. A table near the fireplace held enough food to feed a small army, fresh bread, cheeses, fruits, roasted meats, delicate pastries. This is too much, Fiona said, but her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl. Caspian's lips twitched. I wasn't certain what you'd prefer. Please, eat whatever appeals to you. He settled her into a plush chair near the fire, and Fiona found herself reaching for the bread and cheese, suddenly ravenous. Caspian took the chair across from her, watching with an expression that seemed content just to observe. This is weird, Fiona said around a bite of bread that tasted better than anything she'd ever eaten. You watching me eat. Forgive me. It's been a very long time since I've had someone to care for like this. Something wistful crossed his features. In my human life, I had a sister, Isabella. She was younger, always hungry, constantly asking for treats from the kitchen. Watching you reminds me of her. Fiona swallowed. What happened to her? She lived a long, full life, married a merchant, had children, grew old surrounded by family. Caspian's gaze grew distant. I watched from afar, of course. Couldn't let her know what I'd become. She died believing I'd been killed in the same attack that transformed me. I'm sorry, Fiona said softly. That must have been horrible. It was necessary. Our laws forbid revealing ourselves to humans outside very specific circumstances. The risk of exposure, of panic, of violence, it's too great. He refocused on her. Though, obviously, there are exceptions. You, for instance, now know our secret, which means you're bound by our laws as well, until we decide what to do about your knowledge. The bread suddenly felt heavy in Fiona's stomach. What does that mean? It means the council will want to make a determination about you. They'll interview you, assess whether you can be trusted to keep our secret, whether you pose a risk to our kind. Caspian leaned forward, his intensity burning through the space between them. I won't let them harm you, Fiona. Whatever they decide, whatever politics play out, I will keep you safe. I give you my word. The word of a vampire king, Fiona said, trying for levity, but hearing the tremor in her voice. The word of someone who hasn't felt this way in 700 years, Caspian corrected. The word of someone who would burn his entire court to ash before letting anyone hurt you. The declaration should have frightened her. Instead, it sent warmth flooding through her chest, settling somewhere near her heart. Fiona set down the bread, studying this impossible man who'd upended her entire understanding of reality. Why me? She asked. You said my blood called to you, but there has to be more to it than that. Caspian was quiet for a long moment, seeming to weigh his words. Among our kind, there's a phenomenon that occurs perhaps once in a millennium. We call it the resonance. It's when a vampire encounters a human whose very essence complements their own so perfectly that the connection transcends the physical. Blood is part of it, yes, but it goes deeper. It's as though your soul recognizes mine, and mine yours. That sounds like a fairy tale. Most fairy tales have roots in truth. He stood, moving to the fireplace, staring into the flames. I never believed in the resonance, thought it was romantic nonsense invented by younger vampires to justify poor decision-making. But then I walked into that donation center, and your scent hit me like a physical blow. For the first time in centuries, I felt alive. Truly alive. Fiona rose, drawn to him by something she couldn't name. She stopped a few feet away, watching the firelight play across his pale features. I'm not special. I'm just a junior at university studying English literature. I like bad reality TV, and I can't cook to save my life. I'm about as ordinary as they come. Caspian turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. You're wrong. Even before I knew about the resonance, even before I understood what you meant to me, I saw your kindness. You were there, donating blood, despite your own deficiency, something we discovered after examining you properly. You were literally giving from your own lack to help strangers. That's not ordinary, Fiona. That's extraordinary. Heat flooded her cheeks. I didn't know I was anemic. Which makes it more remarkable, not less. He took a step closer. You have a good heart. A brave one. And whether you believe in supernatural bonds or not, I know with absolute certainty that you walked into my existence for a reason. And if I don't want this, whatever this is, Fiona had to ask, had to know. If I want to go back to my normal life and forget vampires exist? Pain flickered across Caspian's face, quickly masked. Then I'll have your memory altered by one of our enchanters. You'll wake up believing you had a medical emergency, that you were hospitalized and recovered, and you'll return to your life without any knowledge of this world. You'll be safe, normal, free. You'd do that? Just let me go? I would hate it, he admitted, voice rough. It would be one of the hardest things I've ever done. But I won't trap you, Fiona. I won't force this life on you simply because my instincts scream that you belong here. You deserve choice, always choice. Fiona's heart hammered in her chest. She should take that offer, should run back to normalcy and safety and a world that made sense. But looking at Caspian, seeing the vulnerability beneath his regal exterior, feeling the strange pull that had existed between them from the moment she'd opened her eyes, she found she didn't want to forget. I want to stay, she heard herself say. At least for a while. I want to understand this world. Understand you, and maybe understand whatever this is between us. The relief that washed over Caspian's features was almost palpable. You mean that? I'm terrified, Fiona admitted. This is insane and impossible, and I'm probably making the worst decision of my life. But yes, I mean it. Caspian closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. The coolness of his skin against hers felt right somehow, like puzzle pieces fitting together. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You have no idea what this means to me." "Then you should probably show me," Fiona said, surprising herself with her boldness. "Show me your world." A genuine smile transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. "It would be my honor." The next hours passed in a blur of impossible sights. Caspian led her through corridors carved from stone that he explained dated back to the original settlement of the city, when vampires had built their sanctuary deep underground. They passed other vampires, all pale and beautiful and otherworldly, who bowed to Caspian and watched Fiona with expressions ranging from curious to hostile. "Ignore them," Caspian murmured as they walked. "They'll adapt to your presence." He showed her the grand hall, a massive chamber with vaulted ceilings painted with murals depicting vampire history. The council chamber, where marble thrones sat in a semicircle, waiting for the vampires who governed alongside their king. The libraries, filled with books and scrolls that predated the printing press. The gardens, impossibly lush despite being entirely underground, illuminated by some kind of magical light that mimicked sunshine without its deadly effects. "This is beautiful," Fiona breathed, trailing her fingers along flowers she didn't recognize. "How is any of this possible?" "Centuries of adaptation," Caspian explained, walking beside her through paths lined with luminescent blooms. "We've learned to create pockets of life in the darkness, had to really, or go mad from being cut off from nature." "Do you miss it? The sun?" His expression grew thoughtful. "I barely remember it now, if I'm honest. 7 centuries is a long time. But yes, there are moments usually when I'm reading about sunny days in literature where I feel the loss keenly." Fiona looked up at the artificial sky above them, trying to imagine living without ever seeing real sunlight again. "That must be lonely." "It can be." Caspian stopped beside a fountain where water trickled over dark stone. "Immortality sounds glorious in theory. In practice, it means watching everyone you care about age and die while you remain unchanged. It means being careful about forming attachments because they were all temporary. It means centuries of isolation punctuated by brief moments of connection." "Is that why you've never, in 700 years, haven't you ever found someone?" Fiona bit her lip, wondering if she was overstepping. Caspian's gaze was steady on hers. "There have been others. Relationships that lasted decades, even a century once. But they always end. Either the other vampire moves on, or if they're human, they age and die. Or they choose to be turned, and the transformation changes them fundamentally. I learned to guard my heart, to keep distance even in intimacy. Until now." "You don't even know me," Fiona repeated her earlier protest, but it sounded weaker. "Then let me learn." He reached out, tucking a strand of her dark hair behind her ear with such tenderness that she shivered. "Let me discover who you are beneath the surface. Let me prove that this connection between us is worth exploring." Before Fiona could answer, a commotion erupted from somewhere deeper in the sanctuary. Shouts echoed off stone, followed by the sound of something heavy crashing. Caspian's expression shifted instantly, going from open and vulnerable to cold and commanding. "Stay here," he ordered. "Like hell," Fiona shot back. "If something's happening, I want to know what." He looked like he wanted to argue, but another crash made the decision for them. "Stay close to me. Don't speak unless I give you permission. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood?" Fiona nodded, and they hurried back through the gardens, Caspian moving at a pace just slow enough for her to keep up. They emerged into a corridor where vampires had gathered, their attention focused on a confrontation happening near the entrance to the council chamber. 2 male vampires faced off against each other. One was older-looking, with silver-white hair pulled back in a severe style and eyes like chips of ice. The other was younger in appearance, with the same pale coloring, but features that seemed crueler somehow, sharp and predatory in a way that made Fiona's instincts scream danger. "This is madness, Caspian!" the older vampire shouted as soon as he spotted them. "You bring a human into our sanctuary, claim her under your personal protection, and refuse to even let the council examine her. Have you forgotten every law we've built?" "I've forgotten nothing, Lord Constantine." Caspian's voice cut through the noise like ice. "And I'll thank you to remember to whom you're speaking." Constantine's jaw tightened. "Your Majesty," he added with barely concealed contempt. "Your title doesn't exempt you from the Accords. Section 4 clearly states—" "I know what Section 4 states. I was there when it was written. Or have you forgotten that I'm 3 centuries your senior?" Caspian positioned himself slightly in front of Fiona, a subtle but clear protective gesture. "Miss Kellerman is here under my protection while she recovers from a medical emergency. Once she's well enough, the council will conduct the standard interview process." "She should have been brought before us immediately," the younger vampire interjected, his eyes fixed on Fiona with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Unauthorized humans are a security risk. You're thinking with your fangs instead of your brain, cousin." "Cousin?" Fiona filed that information away as Caspian's entire demeanor turned glacial. "Careful, Victor. Your position as my heir doesn't grant you the right to question my judgment in front of the court." Victor's smile was all teeth. "Doesn't it? When your judgment is clearly compromised by a pretty human who probably doesn't even understand what she's gotten herself into." Enough. The single word from Caspian reverberated with power that made every vampire in the corridor flinch. "Victor, Constantine, if you take issue with my decisions, you may formally petition for a council session. Until then, this discussion is over." "Actually," Fiona heard herself say, and felt every vampire eye turn to her. "I think we should have that session now." Caspian turned sharply. "Fiona, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." She stepped forward, chin raised despite her racing heart. "They're right that I don't fully understand what I've gotten into, and they deserve answers about why a random human is suddenly in their sanctuary. So let's give them those answers." Constantine's eyebrows rose. "The human has courage, at least." "More than you know," Caspian said quietly, but pride colored his tone. He studied Fiona's face. "Are you certain?" "No, but let's do it anyway." The council chamber was even more intimidating, filled with vampires. 12 of them sat in the marble thrones, with Caspian taking the largest at the center. Fiona stood in the middle of the semicircle, acutely aware of being the only human, the only one with color in her cheeks and a heartbeat echoing in the cavernous space. Constantine spoke first, his voice formal. "Miss Kellerman, you've been brought into our sanctuary under extraordinary circumstances. Before we can determine your status, we need to understand how much you know and what threat you might pose to our kind." "I don't know very much," Fiona admitted. "I know vampires exist. I know this is your sanctuary beneath the city. I know you drink blood but apparently have ethical arrangements with blood banks. And I know that your king saved my life when I collapsed at a donation center." "And why were you at that donation center?" This from a female vampire with elaborate braids of white hair. "To donate blood. I try to do it every few months. It's an easy way to help people." Murmurs rippled through the council. Victor leaned forward from his position at Caspian's right. "Even though you were already anemic?" "That seems foolish." "I didn't know I was anemic," Fiona said evenly, refusing to be baited. "If I had, obviously I wouldn't have donated." "And yet you survived a collapse that should have killed you," Constantine observed, "because our king intervened personally. Tell me, Miss Kellerman, what do you suppose you owe him for that service?" The implication in his tone made Fiona's hands clench. "I owe him my gratitude, my thanks. But if you're implying I owe him some kind of debt that makes me property—" "She owes me nothing," Caspian interrupted, his voice sharp. "I acted because I chose to, not to create obligation." "How convenient," Victor drawled. "Save the human, claim a resonance bond, and suddenly you have justification for whatever liberties you'd like to take with our laws." "Watch yourself," Caspian warned. "Or what? You'll have me removed from succession?" Victor stood, and Fiona saw the family resemblance clearly now, the same aristocratic features, the same commanding presence. But where Caspian's intensity came from controlled power, Victor's felt volatile. "You haven't named another heir. You need me, cousin." "I need a council I can trust," Caspian countered, "something you're making me question." Before Victor could respond, an older vampire, ancient even by their standards, Fiona guessed, based on the deference others showed him, raised a hand. "Enough. This bickering serves no purpose." He focused on Fiona with eyes that seemed to see through her. "Child, do you understand what a resonance bond means?" His Majesty explained it to me. He said it's a rare connection between a vampire and a human, something about souls recognizing each other. It's more than that, the ancient vampire said. It's a bond that, once formed, cannot be broken without destroying both parties. It means your life is now irrevocably tied to his. It means you'll age while he remains eternal, unless you choose transformation. It means entering a world of politics and danger that no human is prepared for. He paused. It's a beautiful thing, but also a terrible one. Do you truly wish to accept this? Fiona looked at Caspian, finding him watching her with an expression that tried for neutrality but couldn't quite hide the desperate hope beneath. She thought about her normal life, her plans for graduation, her dreams of becoming a teacher. Then she thought about how she'd felt when she woke to find this impossible man refusing to let anyone near her, the way her heart had recognized something in him that transcended logic. I don't know yet, she said honestly, but I'd like the chance to find out. And I think I've earned the right to make that choice myself, without a council of strangers deciding my fate. Several vampires actually smiled at that. The ancient one nodded slowly. Well said. Very well. I propose we grant Miss Kellerman provisional sanctuary status while she and our king determine the nature of their bond. She'll be subject to our laws, but free to come and go as she pleases once she's recovered. All in favor? Hands rose around the semicircle. Not all of them victors remained stubbornly lowered, as did Constantine's and 2 others, but the majority carried the vote. So decided, the ancient vampire declared. Welcome to our world, Miss Kellerman. I hope you survive it. Fiona wasn't sure if that was meant as encouragement or a threat. The council session ended, vampires dispersing with backward glances at her that ranged from curious to calculating. Caspian descended from his throne, reaching her in a few long strides. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly, facing them alone. I wasn't alone. You were there. Fiona managed a shaky smile. Besides, they were right. I needed to prove I could handle this world if I'm going to be part of it. You're remarkable, Caspian said, and the wonder in his voice made her blush. 700 years, and I've never met anyone quite like you. Is that the resonance talking, or you? Both. Neither. Does it matter? He offered his arm. Come, you should rest. Today has been eventful enough. But as they left the council chamber, Victor's voice stopped them. Cousin, a word. Caspian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Wait for me just outside? He asked Fiona softly. She wanted to protest, but the look in his eyes asked for trust, so she nodded and stepped into the corridor. The door didn't close completely, though, and she found herself shamelessly eavesdropping. You're making a mistake, Victor said without preamble. This human will be your downfall. That's my concern, not yours. It's everyone's concern when the king loses his focus because of a fleeting infatuation. Is that what you think this is? Caspian's voice held an edge Fiona hadn't heard before. Victor, I've known you since you were turned, watched you grow into your power. I've tried to groom you as an heir worthy of leading our people. But if you can't see beyond your own ambition, if you're willing to undermine me over a perceived threat, she is a threat, a human who knows our secrets, who has the king's protection, who could upend centuries of carefully maintained balance. She's mine, Caspian snarled, and Fiona heard something primal beneath the words. Mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to decide about. And if you have a problem with that, Victor, perhaps we need to reconsider your position in this court. Silence stretched. Then, Victor's voice, tight with barely controlled rage. You would cast aside your own blood for a mortal who'll be dust in the blink of an eye? I would choose the person who makes me feel alive over the cousin who questions my every decision out of jealousy and spite. Yes. Footsteps approached the door, and Fiona barely managed to step back before Victor stormed out. He paused when he saw her, eyes flashing with something dangerous. Enjoy it while it lasts, human, he said softly. Nothing gold can stay, especially not for our kind. Then he was gone, moving with that impossible vampire speed. Caspian emerged a moment later, looking weary in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. You hurt, he said, not a question. Enough, Fiona moved closer. Is he right? Am I causing problems between you and your family? Victor has been causing problems since before you were born. This is merely the latest manifestation. Caspian ran a hand through his pale hair. He thinks he should be king already. Thinks I've held the position too long, grown too set in my ways. Your arrival just gave him a new avenue of attack. I'm sorry. Don't be. His issues are his own. Caspian cupped her face gently, thumb brushing her cheekbone. You make me happy, Fiona. I haven't been able to say that in longer than I can remember. Don't apologize for that. Fiona leaned into his touch, marveling at how natural it felt. This is crazy. A week ago, my biggest concern was whether I'd pass my Victorian literature exam. Now I'm in the middle of vampire politics and ancient grudges. Do you want to leave? The question was soft, almost fearful. I meant what I said. I won't keep you against your will. She should say yes. Should run back to normalcy and safety. Instead, she found herself rising on her toes and pressing a soft kiss to his cool lips. Caspian froze for a heartbeat, then made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, deepening the kiss with a passion that made her knees weak. His lips were cool against hers, but the way he kissed her reverently, desperately, like she was oxygen and he was drowning, burned hotter than any fire. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, well, Fiona was, Caspian didn't technically need to breathe, she smiled up at him. Does that answer your question? I think I need you to repeat it, he said, voice rough, just to be certain. Fiona laughed and kissed him again. The following days fell into a strange but wonderful rhythm. Fiona spent her mornings resting and rebuilding her strength, eating the elaborate meals Caspian's staff prepared. Afternoons were spent exploring the sanctuary, learning about vampire history and culture, meeting various court members who ranged from welcoming to wary. And evenings belonged to Caspian. They talked for hours, trading stories about their vastly different lives. Fiona told him about growing up in a small town, about her parents who ran a bookstore, about her dreams of teaching literature to high school students. Caspian spoke of his human life in medieval Romania, of witnessing the rise and fall of empires, of the loneliness that came with immortality. I watched the Renaissance happen, he said one evening as they sat in the gardens, Fiona's head resting against his shoulder. Saw the Enlightenment transform human thought, lived through both world wars from the shadows. It's strange being part of history while remaining apart from it. Do you ever wish you could change things, use your power to influence events? Every day. But our laws forbid direct interference in human affairs for good reason. We've learned the hard way that vampires playing God leads to catastrophe. His arm tightened around her. Though I've bent those rules on occasion, couldn't let certain horrors go unchallenged, even if I had to work from the shadows. Fiona tilted her head to look up at him. You're a good man, Caspian. Or vampire. Or whatever the correct term is. He smiled, and she still marveled at how that expression transformed his entire face. Just, Caspian works fine. Caspian, who happens to be a 700-year-old vampire king with supernatural powers and a complicated family situation, Fiona amended. When you phrase it like that, it sounds intimidating. It is intimidating. You're intimidating. She poked his chest, but also kind of wonderful. Kind of? He raised an eyebrow. Don't let it go to your head. Your ego is already barely fitting in this cavern. Caspian laughed, the sound rich and genuine, and Fiona felt it resonate in her chest. I've missed this, he said softly. Having someone who sees me as just me. Not the king, not the centuries-old vampire, just Caspian. Well, Caspian, Fiona said, I think I might be falling for you. The words hung in the air between them. She hadn't planned to say them, hadn't meant to be quite so honest, but looking into his eyes, she couldn't regret it. Thank God, Caspian breathed, because I've already fallen for you. He kissed her then, and Fiona lost herself in the sensation of his lips on hers, his hands in her hair, the way he held her like she was precious and essential and his. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling. But their happiness was short-lived. The next evening, everything changed. Fiona was in the library browsing through ancient texts about vampire history that Caspian had recommended when she heard shouting. Not the heated but controlled arguments she'd witnessed before, but genuine panic. She ran toward the noise, heart pounding, and found chaos erupting in one of the main corridors. Vampires rushed past her, some bleeding from wounds that shouldn't have been possible. The scent of blood hung heavy in the air, along with something else smoke. "Fiona!" Caspian appeared beside her, grabbing her arm. "We need to get you somewhere safe. Now." "What's happening?" "Hunters. They've found one of the sanctuary entrances and broken through our defenses. We need to evacuate you before Ofkini." An explosion rocked the corridor, sending them both stumbling. Debris rained down from the ceiling, and through the dust Fiona saw them, humans in tactical gear, wielding weapons that gleamed with silver. Hunters. "Go!" Caspian shoved her toward a side passage. "Get to my chambers. They're the most heavily warded. Don't let anyone in except me." "I'm not leaving you to fight them alone." "I won't be alone. I have my guard." His eyes blazed with urgency. "Please, Fiona, I can't focus on defending the sanctuary if I'm worried about your safety. Please." The desperation in his voice decided her. Fiona nodded and ran, following the passage he'd indicated. Behind her, she heard Caspian's voice raised in command, heard the clash of combat beginning. She burst into his chambers and slammed the door, throwing the heavy bolt Caspian had shown her. The room was silent except for her own ragged breathing. Fiona paced, every instinct screaming at her to go back, to help somehow, to at least know what was happening. Minutes crawled by like hours. The sounds of battle were muffled here, but she could still hear them: distant shouts, crashes, the occasional scream. She tried not to imagine Caspian injured or worse. A knock at the door made her jump. "Fiona, it's me. Let me in." Victor's voice. Fiona froze, Caspian's warning echoing in her mind. "Don't let anyone in except me." "Caspian told me to stay here until he comes for me," she called through the door. "Caspian is injured. He sent me to evacuate you through the escape tunnels." Victor's voice was urgent. "Please, we don't have much time. The hunters are overwhelming our defenses." Fiona's hand hovered over the bolt. Every part of her wanted to believe him, wanted to help if Caspian was hurt, but something felt wrong. "If Caspian's injured, I want to see him first." Silence. Then, "You don't trust me." "Should I? You've made it pretty clear you think I'm a threat." "I think you're a distraction and a liability," Victor agreed. "But I'm not going to let you die to prove that point. Open the door, Fiona." "No." She heard him curse, then the sound of something slamming against the wood. The door shuddered, but held. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but Caspian told me not to let anyone in. That includes you." More cursing, then footsteps retreating. Fiona backed away from the door, heart hammering. Had she just condemned herself by refusing to leave? Or had she avoided whatever trap Victor was setting? The weight became unbearable. The sounds of battle seemed to fade, replaced by an ominous silence. Fiona found herself bargaining with a god she wasn't sure she believed in. "Please let him be okay. I'll do anything. Just please let him be okay." When the knock finally came again, she nearly sobbed with relief at Caspian's voice. "Fiona, it's me. Let me in." She threw the bolt and wrenched the door open to find him covered in blood and soot, a gash across his cheek already healing. But alive. Alive. "Oh, thank God," she breathed, throwing herself into his arms. Caspian held her tight, burying his face in her hair. "You're safe. You stayed. Good girl." Victor came, tried to get me to leave with him, said you were injured and I needed to evacuate. Caspian's arms turned to steel bands around her. "Victor," he growled, "I'm going to kill him." "What do you mean? Was he lying?" "The hunters were his doing. He orchestrated the attack as a distraction while he tried to abduct you." Caspian pulled back enough to look at her, eyes blazing. "We captured one of the hunters alive. Under interrogation, he revealed that Victor approached them with information about our sanctuary in exchange for their help eliminating a human threat in our midst." Horror washed over Fiona. "Me. I'm the threat he wanted eliminated. He thought if he could make your death look like an unfortunate casualty of the attack, I'd be devastated, but have no one to blame except the hunters." Caspian's jaw clenched. He didn't count on you being smart enough to ignore him when he tried to lure you out. "Where is he now?" "Fleeing, if he has any sense. I've declared him traitor to the court. He'll be hunted until he's found and executed." The coldness in Caspian's voice sent chills down her spine. "No one threatens what's mine and lives." Fiona cupped his face, forcing him to focus on her. "I'm okay. We're both okay. That's what matters." Some of the fury drained from his expression, replaced by exhaustion and relief. "When I realized what he'd done, all I could think about was getting to you. If he'd succeeded, if I'd lost you." "You didn't. I'm right here." She kissed him softly. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere. Caspian kissed her back with a desperation that spoke of how close they'd come to disaster. When he finally pulled away, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said quietly. I know it's too soon. I know we've barely had any time together, but I need you to know. I love you, Fiona Kellerman. You've brought light into centuries of darkness. Tears pricked Fiona's eyes. I love you too, my vampire king. Just Caspian, he corrected gently. Just Caspian, she agreed. The aftermath of the attack took days to sort through. The sanctuary's defenses were reinforced. The council conducted a thorough investigation into Victor's betrayal, and Fiona found herself at the center of increasingly serious discussions about her future. You can't remain human forever, Constantine said during one council session. His tone was gentler than before, almost sympathetic. The bond between you and His Majesty will only deepen. Eventually, you'll have to choose transformation or mortality. I know, Fiona said, though the thought terrified her, but I need time to consider what that means. Time is something we have in abundance, the ancient vampire whose name she'd learned was Erasmus observed. But be aware, child, that the choice becomes harder the longer you wait. The more you love him, the more painful it will be to imagine leaving him through death. Or the more certain I'll be about choosing to stay forever, Fiona countered. Erasmus smiled. Well said. In private, Caspian never pressured her about the decision. They spent weeks together, Fiona gradually resuming aspects of her normal life, attending classes remotely, keeping in touch with her family through carefully curated phone calls, while also sinking deeper into the vampire world. She met the enforcers who kept vampire society in line, observed the intricate politics between various courts across the globe, learned about the complex web of laws and traditions that governed immortal existence. And through it all, she fell more completely in love with Caspian. He was patient with her questions, supportive of her need to maintain connections to her human life, and absolutely unwavering in his protection of her. When other vampires questioned her presence, he shut them down with icy authority. When she struggled with the moral implications of vampire feeding practices, he listened and made adjustments to ensure blood was sourced as ethically as possible. You're changing things, one of the younger vampires told her one evening. The court is softer than it was, more human. Is that a bad thing? Fiona asked. No, the vampire said after a moment's thought. I don't think it is. 3 months after she'd first woken in the sanctuary, Fiona made her decision. She found Caspian in his study, reviewing reports from other courts. He looked up when she entered, and the smile that lit his face made her heart skip. Hello, love. I wasn't expecting you for another hour. I wanted to talk to you about something. Fiona took a deep breath. About the transformation. Caspian set down the papers, giving her his full attention. All right. I've been thinking about what Erasmus said, about how the choice gets harder the longer I wait. And I've realized he's wrong. She moved closer, taking Caspian's hands. The choice isn't getting harder. It's getting clearer. Every day I spend with you, I become more certain that I want forever. Not just a human lifetime, but actual forever. Hope and fear warred in Caspian's expression. Fiona, you can't make this decision lightly. Transformation is permanent. You'll outlive everyone you know, watch the world change beyond recognition, face challenges I can't even predict. I know, and I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of the alternative of leaving you, of our time together having an expiration date. She squeezed his hands. I love you. Caspian, I want to be with you, truly with you, in every way that matters. I want to stand beside you as your equal, not the human you have to protect. I want forever. Are you absolutely certain? His voice was rough with emotion. Yes, turn me, Caspian. Make me yours in every way. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I love you. God, I love you so much. Show me, Fiona whispered. The transformation process was explained to her in careful detail by Erasmus and the court physician. Fiona would need to be drained nearly to death, then drink from Caspian to begin the change. The transformation itself would take 3 days of fever and pain as her body died and reformed. She'd wake as a newborn vampire, hungry and disoriented, needing careful guidance through her first months. "It will hurt," Erasmus warned her. "There's no way to make it painless, but Caspian will be with you through all of it." "I know." Fiona was prepared. As prepared as anyone could be for their own death and rebirth. They chose the next new moon for the transformation, a traditional time in vampire culture for such rituals. The intervening week was bittersweet. Fiona called her parents, telling them she'd been offered an incredible opportunity to study abroad and would be out of contact for a while. The lies tasted bitter, but necessary. "We're so proud of you, honey," her mother said, voice warm through the phone. "This sounds like an amazing adventure." "It really is, Mom." Fiona blinked back tears. "I love you both so much." "We love you too, sweetheart. Send us pictures when you can," Fiona promised, knowing she'd have to fake those pictures for years, decades, maybe centuries. The thought made her ache, but she'd made her choice. The night of the transformation, Caspian led her to a private chamber deep in the sanctuary. It had been prepared carefully, soft bedding, candles providing warm light, everything positioned to make her as comfortable as possible during the ordeal ahead. "Last chance to change your mind," Caspian said, though his hands trembled slightly as he held hers. "I'm not changing my mind." Fiona reached up to kiss him. "I'm ready." "Then lie down, love. Let me take care of you." Fiona settled onto the bed, her heart racing. Caspian joined her, gathering her into his arms so her head rested against his shoulder. His fingers stroked through her hair with infinite gentleness. "This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you," he murmured, "knowing I'm causing you pain." "You're giving me forever," Fiona corrected. "Focus on that." He kissed her temple, her cheek, her lips. Then his mouth moved to her throat, and she felt the gentle scrape of fangs she'd never seen him fully extend before. "I love you," he whispered against her skin. "I love you too. Now do it before I lose my nerve." The bite was sharp and sudden, pain flaring bright before giving way to something almost euphoric. Fiona gasped as Caspian began to drink, each pull sending strange sensations through her body. She could feel her heartbeat slowing, feel warmth draining away, feel the edges of darkness creeping in. Just when she thought she might slip away entirely, Caspian pulled back. His wrist was already bleeding. He must have bitten it himself, and he pressed it to her lips. "Drink, love. Drink and come back to me." The taste of his blood was unlike anything Fiona had experienced. It was cool and rich and tasted like power, like eternity, like home. She drank desperately, feeling strange heat begin to build in her chest, spreading through her veins like liquid fire. The pain hit all at once. Fiona screamed, her body convulsing as the transformation began. Caspian held her through it, whispering reassurances she couldn't process through the agony, his presence the only anchor in a sea of suffering. Time lost meaning. The 3 days passed in a blur of fever, dreams and pain, moments of lucidity where she was aware of Caspian's voice, his touch, his constant presence. He never left her side, she realized dimly. Even when she begged him to, when she said terrible things through the delirium, he stayed. When she finally woke, truly woke, the world had changed. Everything was sharper, clearer, more vivid than before. She could hear heartbeats from rooms away, could smell traces of blood and life and death. Her body felt different, stronger, faster, perfectly controlled yet alien. And she was so hungry. "Easy, love." Caspian was there, looking exhausted but relieved. "I know you're starving. We have blood ready for you." He helped her sit up, and Fiona marveled at the ease of movement, the strength in her limbs. She caught sight of her reflection in a mirror across the room and gasped. Her skin had paled to porcelain, her eyes shifted to a crimson red. Her features were sharper somehow, more defined, otherworldly beautiful in a way that was distinctly inhuman. "I'm really one of you now," she whispered. "You are." Caspian cupped her face, and she noticed for the first time that his skin temperature matched hers now, both cool, both undead. "How do you feel?" "Hungry. Strange. Different." She met his eyes. "But also right. This feels right." Relief flooded his expression. "Thank God. I was so worried you'd regret it." "Never." Fiona kissed him, marveling at how different it felt with her enhanced senses. She could hear his body's responses, could smell emotions on his skin, could feel the bond between them on a level she'd never imagined. "I love you. Forever, now." "Forever," Caspian agreed, and kissed her again. The first months as a newborn vampire were challenging but exhilarating. Fiona had to learn to control her strength, to manage her bloodlust, to navigate vampire society as a full member rather than a protected human. Caspian was patient through all of it, teaching her, protecting her when needed, but also giving her space to find her own footing. "You're doing remarkably well," Erasmus told her one evening as she practiced controlling her speed in the training rooms. "Most newborns take years to achieve this level of control. You've managed it in months." "I have good motivation," Fiona said, glancing at where Caspian watched from the sidelines, pride evident in his expression. "Indeed you do." As Fiona's control improved, she began to take on responsibilities within the court. She worked with the blood bank liaisons, improving relations with human donors. She helped modernize some of the court's more archaic practices, bringing a human perspective that proved valuable. And she stood beside Caspian as his partner, his equal, his queen in all but official title. "The council wants to formalize our bond," Caspian told her one evening, 6 months after her transformation. They were in the gardens, her favorite place in the sanctuary. "They're proposing a coronation ceremony to name you officially as queen consort." Fiona's eyes widened. "That's a lot." "It is, and it's entirely your choice. We don't need a ceremony to make what we have real. But politically, it would strengthen our position and send a clear message about your status in this court. What do you want?" Caspian pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours. I want every vampire across the globe to understand that you're not just under my protection, you're my partner, my love, my everything. But only if that's what you want too." Fiona thought about the weight of a crown, the responsibility of a title, the politics and complications it would bring. Then she thought about standing beside Caspian forever, facing whatever challenges came as a unified force. "Let's do it," she said. "Let's make it official." The coronation was planned for the winter solstice, the longest night of the year and a time of traditional celebration in vampire culture. Courts from around the world sent representatives, the sanctuary filled with vampires Fiona had never met, all coming to witness the human-turned-vampire becoming their queen. "Nervous?" Caspian asked as they prepared in their chambers the night of the ceremony. "Terrified," Fiona admitted, adjusting the elaborate gown the court seamstresses had created. It was deep crimson, the color of fresh blood, with intricate silver embroidery that caught the light. "What if I mess up the ceremony? What if I say the wrong thing?" "Then we'll laugh about it later." Caspian came up behind her, helping fasten the delicate clasp at her neck. "Fiona, you've faced down vampire politics, survived transformation, and won over even the most skeptical members of my court. A ceremony is nothing compared to what you've already accomplished." She met his eyes in the mirror. "When did you become so good at pep talks?" 700 years of practice." He kissed her shoulder. "You're going to be magnificent." The ceremony was held in the grand hall, transformed for the occasion with flowers that bloomed only in darkness and thousands of candles that made the space glow like captured starlight. Fiona processed down an aisle of vampires, their red eyes tracking her progress, and tried to remember to breathe even though she didn't technically need to anymore. Caspian waited for her at the front of the hall, looking devastating in formal regalia that combined historical elements with modern styling. His expression when he saw her made every nervous flutter worth it. The ceremony itself was beautiful and ancient, conducted in a mixture of Latin and the original Romanian that Caspian had spoken as a human. Fiona repeated the vows, promising to serve the court with wisdom and strength, to uphold vampire law, to stand beside her king through eternity. When Erasmus placed the crown on her head, a delicate circlet of silver set with rubies, Fiona felt the weight of it settle not just physically, but symbolically. This was real. She was really going to be vampire royalty. "I present to you," Caspian's voice rang out across the hall, "Queen Fiona Kellerman Draculesht, consort of the Noctis court, my partner in all things forever." The assembled vampires bowed, a wave of motion that rippled through the crowd. Fiona's breath caught at the sight of it, at the reality of what she'd become. Then Caspian was taking her hand, pulling her close, kissing her in front of everyone with a passion that made it clear exactly what she meant to him. The court erupted in applause, and Fiona found herself laughing against his lips. "Forever," she whispered when they finally broke apart. "Forever," Caspian agreed. The celebration lasted well into the early morning hours. Fiona met vampires from courts in Tokyo, London, Cairo, Sao Paulo, each bringing greetings and gifts and carefully worded political overtures. She danced with Caspian, with Erasmus, with various dignitaries, until her feet ached despite her supernatural stamina. "Having fun, Your Majesty?" Caspian teased as they swayed together during a slower song. "Stop calling me that. It's weird." "You'll get used to it," he spun her gently. "Besides, you wear the title well. I've watched you tonight, winning over skeptics with your intelligence and charm. You're a natural at this." "I had a good teacher." "I think you've surpassed the teacher." Caspian's expression turned serious. "I mean it, Fiona. You've changed this court for the better, made us more connected to the modern world, more ethical in our practices, more human in the best way. You've changed me too. Made me remember why I wanted to lead our people in the first place, to build something good, something lasting, something worth protecting." Tears, vampire tears, which she'd learned came much less easily than human ones, pricked Fiona's eyes. "I love you. So much. I love you too, my queen, my Fiona." He kissed her softly. "Thank you for choosing this life, for choosing me. Best decision I ever made." As the celebration wound down and guests began departing to their various territories, Fiona and Caspian finally escaped to their private chambers. Fiona kicked off her ceremonial shoes with a grateful sigh, and Caspian laughed as he helped her out of the elaborate gown. "Comfortable?" he asked when she'd changed into simpler clothes. "Much." Fiona curled up beside him on their bed, his arms coming around her automatically. "That was amazing. Exhausting, but amazing." "You were amazing." Caspian pressed a kiss to her hair. "I kept watching you and thinking about how close I came to never meeting you. If you hadn't decided to donate blood that day, if I'd been conducting inspections at a different center, if you'd been just slightly less stubborn about staying when Victor tried to lure you away." "But I did, and you were, and I was," Fiona interrupted. "We found each other, Caspian. Maybe that was fate, maybe it was the resonance, maybe it was just dumb luck. But we're here now, and we have forever ahead of us." "Forever," he repeated, like a prayer. "What do you want to do with it?" Fiona thought about that, about endless nights stretching ahead, about the world they could explore together, about the good they could do with eternity at their disposal. "Everything," she said finally. "I want to travel to every court, learn about different vampire cultures. I want to modernize more of our practices, make the vampire world better for everyone. I want to work on human-vampire relations, find ways for our species to coexist more peacefully. And I want to do it all with you." Caspian's smile was radiant. "That sounds perfect." They stayed like that for a long while, wrapped in each other's arms, talking about dreams and plans and the infinite possibilities of forever. Eventually, conversation faded into comfortable silence, the kind that only came with complete trust and understanding. "Fiona," Caspian's voice was soft in the darkness. "Thank you for fainting that day." She laughed, the sound bright and joyful. "Thank you for refusing to let anyone touch me. Always. I'll always protect you, love you, stand beside you." He kissed her temple. "For as long as forever lasts." Fiona tilted her head up to meet his lips in a kiss that tasted like promises and eternity. "Forever sounds pretty good to me." Outside their chambers, the Noctis court settled into rest as dawn approached somewhere far above their underground sanctuary. But in that moment, wrapped in each other's arms, Fiona and Caspian existed in their own perfect bubble of happiness. She'd come to donate blood and nearly died. She'd woken to find a vampire king refusing to let anyone touch her. She'd fallen in love across species lines, survived transformation, and claimed her place as queen of an immortal court. And it had all started with a simple act of kindness, donating blood to help strangers. Fiona smiled against Caspian's chest, listening to the silence where his heartbeat should have been, feeling her own still heart echoing that quietness. They were both dead in the technical sense, but she'd never felt more alive. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Caspian replied. "My human, my vampire, my queen, my Fiona." "Just Fiona works fine," she said, echoing his words from so long ago. "Just Fiona," he agreed, pulling her closer. "Forever." And in the sanctuary beneath the city, in the heart of the vampire world, the king and his queen held each other close and dreamed of all the forevers still to come. Years passed, then decades, and Fiona grew into her role as queen with grace and strength that surprised even herself. She and Caspian traveled the world together, visiting courts on every continent, strengthening alliances and improving relations between vampires and the human world. They established better systems for ethical blood sourcing, created educational programs to help newborn vampires adjust to their transformation, and worked to modernize laws that had remained unchanged for centuries. The Noctis court flourished under their combined leadership. Vampires who had once been skeptical of the human-turned-queen came to respect her wisdom and compassion. The sanctuary expanded, incorporating new technologies while maintaining its historical beauty. Fiona stayed in contact with her human family as long as she could, using carefully staged photos and video calls to maintain the fiction of a daughter who aged normally. When her parents eventually passed away peacefully in their old age, she grieved with Caspian's support, grateful for the time she'd had, even if they never knew the truth about what she'd become. "It never gets easier," Caspian told her as they stood in the gardens, Fiona crying vampire tears that came so rarely. "Losing people you love, but it does become more bearable, knowing you carry their memory forward through eternity." "Tell me about your sister again," Fiona requested. "About Isabella." So Caspian shared stories of his long-dead sister, and Fiona shared memories of her parents, and together they honored the humans they'd loved and lost. But life continued, rich and full despite the losses. Fiona discovered a talent for diplomacy that made her invaluable in negotiations with other courts. She helped establish the first formal Human-Vampire Alliance Council, bringing together leaders from both species to work toward mutual understanding. She even wrote a book under a pseudonym, of course, about ethical considerations in immortal governance that became required reading in vampire courts worldwide. Through it all, her bond with Caspian only deepened. They were partners in every sense, ruling together, dreaming together, facing challenges as a united force. The resonance that had drawn them together continued to strengthen, until Fiona couldn't imagine existence without him. On the 50th anniversary of her transformation, Caspian surprised her with a private celebration in the gardens. He'd arranged for the magical lights to shift into patterns that mimicked sunset, creating the illusion of the sun she could no longer see. "It's beautiful," Fiona breathed, watching colors play across the flowers. "Not as beautiful as you." Caspian pulled her close. 50 years together, with infinite more ahead. I fall more in love with you every single day." "That's impossible. There has to be a limit to how much you can love someone. Then I'll spend eternity proving you wrong." He kissed her softly. "Thank you, Fiona, for choosing me, for choosing this life, for being exactly who you are." "Thank you for saving me," she replied, "for refusing to let anyone touch me when I was vulnerable, for protecting me, loving me, standing beside me through everything. Always," Caspian promised, "forever and always." They danced together under the artificial sunset, two vampires who'd found each other against all odds, who'd built something beautiful from an impossible situation, who'd proven that love could transcend species and mortality and time itself. Fiona had fainted donating blood and woken to a vampire king who refused to let anyone touch her. It had been the beginning of everything, of transformation, of love, of a forever she wouldn't trade for anything. As Caspian held her close and the magical lights painted the garden in shades of gold and crimson, Fiona smiled and let herself sink into the perfect contentment of the moment. She had eternity ahead of her, and she planned to spend every second of it with the vampire who'd become her everything. The human girl who'd wanted to help others by donating blood had found her purpose in the vampire world, standing beside a king who'd ruled for centuries alone until she'd stumbled into his existence and changed everything. It was impossible. It was perfect. It was theirs, and it was forever.